Well, hello and welcome. My name is Chris Tanner, and I'm a member of the business development team here at New Direction Trust Company. And we have a very interesting topic today. We're going to be talking about tax liens, and we have a special guest, Charles Sells from the PIP Group, who's been investing in tax liens for quite a while. And before we jump into the tax liens and how you can invest in those, we do have just a couple of house cleaning items. And so we always have to go through the New Direction disclaimer. And essentially, the disclaimer is saying that although today's presentation is talking about a type of investment, we don't endorse any specific investment. We're not attorneys, we're not accountants, and so we don't provide any legal guidance or any financial guidance. So today's presentation is really just intended for educational purposes. And so take that with a grain of salt. We just like to do this as a service to our clients and those that are interested in learning about some alternative ways of investing. And so, Charles, if you want to jump back in,
Awesome.
how are you doing today?
Good. How about you? How's the weather out in Denver?
You know, it cooled down quite a bit. We still have fires burning out in Colorado, so we had a little bit of ash on the lawn. But other than that, we're welcoming the cooler weather. Hopefully that helps with the fires. How you doing out in South Carolina? Correct?
It's about 85 degrees. Currently working from home, and can't knock it. Can't beat it. We like the cooler weather about 3 days out of the year, but that's about it. Otherwise, we like to have it, 70 and 80 degrees. So it's a perfect day here for us.
Boy, that sounds like real tough living.
Right. Well, dodging the bullets with the hurricanes the last few years. We thought for sure 2020 we'd get hit again, but we're crawling out of the end of the season. So we're hoping we didn't have to deal with that drama this year. So there's enough drama in the world right now. So
Absolutely.
let's jump right into it. So what we're talking about today is I did a webinar that was more broad on tax liens, and I wanted to really kind of dig down into a specific state like Illinois, because Illinois it's a really attractive state, but we're going to talk about the good, bad, ugly, and then it gets good again because of what's going on in the world today. And since my start in this industry, now going on 24 years ago, tax liens in Illinois were fantastic. It was what we called a good redemption state. Essentially, that means that we'll cover this again, but that essentially just means that we most of the liens that you would buy would redeem. Over the course of the years, the taxes have gone up in Illinois, making it harder and harder for folks to get those taxes paid. So it's really starting to convert, especially with everything that's going on in the world today and with the economy coming, into what's more of a hybrid, if you will. It's still really good for redemptions, but it's also going to become and is now a cash flow, a buy and hold cash flow for rent type of investment plan, if you will. So if we look at, I'll get my slides working here. Real quick, just about us. On behalf of PIP clients, we invest in tax liens, tax deeds, probate deeds, bank foreclosures. So we've been doing this again for about 24 years now, and I have essentially evolved the company from just doing tax liens through all the fix and flips and the buy and holds. Because if you have to be versed in tax liens, you actually need to be able to do all those other things. So it only made sense for us to be in all those types of investments. So if it's distressed and it's single family, our hands are likely on it in the areas we invest in. We'll cover Illinois again in a little more detail, but here's a snapshot of essentially how it breaks down. The maximum bids at the auction are 18%. What makes it so attractive is that those, for lack of a better term, double every 6 months. So if you buy it at 18%, that becomes 36. After 12 months and a day, it becomes 54, and so on, all the way up until it gets to about 108%. And we're gonna illustrate that here in just a minute. Now the webinar is called No Hype, tax liens, and that's exactly what I want to bring to you. I'm going to show you how awesome Illinois tax liens can be, but then we're going to scale it back a little bit too. These quotes I have on the screen are actual quotes. I hesitate to call them competitors because these kinds of words would never come out of my mouth. But these are kind of things that are out there, and ever since I got into the business, and to give you an idea of when that was, it was way back in the Carlton Sheets days, and he was essentially pitching the same concept. Turning $20,000 into $20 million in a year. That actually was taken directly off of somebody's website. That is an impossibility. It's not going to happen. Tax liens can be a great, reliable investment, but they require a lot of due diligence, a lot of work, and you're not going to make 900 or 99% profit on your investment. Actually, no, that would be what, 9,000% profit on your investment in investing in tax liens. So put that at rest. Now, really
And
quickly,
Charles, if
yes.
you don't mind, I just wanted to mention real quick, one of the reasons I was excited to bring you in is you had done a similar presentation, and I really appreciated the fact that, you laid out that tax liens are a good investment, but it's not easy. It's not like clicking a button at your computer and it's all done. And I just wanted everyone to know that I appreciated the honesty and the transparency. And that's part of the reason we're here today, is that I think your portrayal of tax liens and how it works is an honest portrayal. And so if people are interested, they have a real feel for what they can expect. And so I just wanted to throw that in real quick.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate that, Chris, because that's it makes it easier on all of us if we're transparent as to how this process works, so we know what to expect to in 3 years down the road. So I absolutely do appreciate that. It is a great opportunity, but it is a lot of work. But surprisingly, a lot of people in this country don't even know that their property can be sold for taxes. I've been in my own treasurer's office more than once where the tax sale had just occurred, and there's people in there just beside themselves that this could even happen. So very broadly, tax liens are essentially meant to pay for your county level government budget, the schools, the roads, the hospitals, the police, the firefighters. So that's what your property taxes are there to pay for. So if those aren't paid, the county still has to hit that budget no matter what. So they sell those taxes to investors like us. They put really good terms on them, as you saw, like in Illinois. Most states actually do that. It's going to be better than your average. And then they set a time, a legislative deadline as to when those taxes can be redeemed by the homeowner or the mortgage company. And if that doesn't happen, then you actually have the right to foreclose on the property. So that's the broad overview of what tax liens are. The process, more or less, it looks pretty simple, but we're going to get into some of the nuances here in a minute. Taxes become delinquent, they're advertised for public auction, and that process is anywhere from 90 days to 180 days in the state of Illinois. There's a period of time that they have to redeem, as I discussed, and then you have the option to foreclose and quiet the title. Now, obviously, inside this box, there's a whole lot of things going on, and that's what we're going to take out of this no hype to the process. Now, the first question that always comes up at this point is what about first mortgages? As I just mentioned, they have the right to redeem just like the homeowner does to protect their interest in the property. And those will usually be the first ones that do redeem. Mortgages are not a super lien, however. Super liens are IRS liens, property tax liens, code enforcement, municipal liens, and HOA liens. And you see here, the way I've laid it out is essentially the priority of how those work. And so the next question is okay, what about IRS liens? If we buy a property or if we buy a tax lien and we're getting ready to foreclose on it and there's an IRS lien attached to it, by law, we have to give the IRS 180 days notice that we're doing this. And then they have a right to come in, negotiate or overrule essentially whatever the IRS wants to do, they can do. But I'll tell you, in the years I've been in this business, the number of liens that have crossed my desk, I have not one time ever seen an IRS lien be applied to the new homeowner, i.e. the tax buyer or you in this situation. So you know, put your mind at rest that is not something that is a big concern. Oh, I got the slide in here twice, it seems. We'll keep going. So this is a tax lien certificate. It looks and feels, you know, like something very official. It looks almost like a bond, if you will, and it outlines everything that's going on that particular tax lien. It shows the property class, which on this one, it's a commercial property, the permanent index number, who's holding it, the number of acres, how much we paid for it, and the penalty rate at which we bought it for. So in this particular example, we bought it for $2,600. We bought it at the full interest rate of 18%. So this is actually earning 36% a year, because remember, after 6 months and a day, it's going to go from 18 to 36, and it's going to continue to increment like that for up to 3 years. In the state of Illinois, as I said, legislation regulates how much time you have. In Illinois, it has some flexibilities and some variances. It's 2 to 2.5 years, but you can extend that right to 3 years. Now, because we've always considered Illinois until recent years a redemption state, we've always extended that right to redeem to the furthest point possible. The goal still remains in Illinois that we want as many liens to redeem as we possibly can. So we want to give extra time to make that happen, because as we're going to see in a second, Illinois has some weird laws where we have to actually engage in foreclosure before the right to redeem has even expired. So we want to be foreclosing, but we want to be foreclosing on the minimum that we have to. So let's go through the process from the beginning. First, you have to register for a tax sale in Illinois. You have to do that 10 business days in advance. There's a cost of $250 to $500, depending on the size of the county, to do that. That is just to have your right to bid in the auction. This is just an old version of what it looks like. It's a very simple process. Registration for the tax sale is very easy. You can see we paid on this one $300 plus the cost of the list for this one. But this is what it looks like throughout the entire state, is a form similar to this. Now, I have a number of followers, some who are probably on this webinar. Out of Illinois, we have 102 counties. Out of those, we invest in 87. That number until this year was 97. Because of what we expect is going to happen with the housing market, and because Illinois we are shifting essentially, we're almost doing a 180 on our strategies in Illinois this year. We're limiting down some of the counties that we've been investing in the past. There's a number of variables as to why we're doing that. I won't get into all those, but we're investing in 87 counties out of 102. That makes us one of the biggest Illinois tax buyers as far as county coverage is concerned. We're not the biggest monetarily, but county coverage, we're one of the biggest. What that enables us is to essentially thin out the competition. So we're able to get those really good high redemptive rates while also maintaining a certain level of property condition. Now, not all of them are going to be great, because distressed real estate is not pretty. But that is our strategy and has been our strategy in Illinois. But we've reduced it by 10 counties for what's coming on in the future. So after the sale, you essentially, again, you have that 2 to 3 year redemption period. And if it's not redeemed, the tax buyer must petition the circuit court for a tax deed after first fulfilling all of the legal requirements. So as Chris pointed out, it's not just click a button on your computer and you're done. This is taken verbatim from the legislation, and the fulfilling of all legal requirements requires you to know all the laws surrounding the tax liens, which many people don't. The first being a take notice. This is a take notice that has to be filed within 3 months of purchasing the tax lien at the auction. It's a little misleading because it says the property has been sold for delinquent taxes, which is not necessarily accurate. A lien has been sold against the property for delinquent taxes. Because of this misleading language, it gets both the homeowner and the tax buyer into a little bit of a bind. Somebody gets this notice in the mail and they flip out. They think their home's been sold, and some of them just, for whatever reason, they just accept this as law because it's coming from the county's office, and they may trash the home right there at that point. They may burn it to the ground. We have had a number of properties burned to the ground. But this is a take notice that must be filed within 3 months of the purchase of the lien. Without this, those rights to foreclose are gone. They're completely gone. You don't have a right to foreclose without having this on file with the county. So that's one thing to take out of the equation of this is really easy to do. Now, me being a visual guy, we're now coasting. We filed those take notices, and we're kind of coasting along now for the next 2 years as we watch these redemptions come in. And this just shows you how those come in and how those penalties do in fact work. Purchased on November 13th of 19, redeemed in January of 20 on all of these at the full redemptive penalty rate. So redemption certificates come in all shapes and sizes, depending on the county. Sometimes it's one redemption per page. Sometimes it's multiple redemptions per page, as I showed you. Sometimes it's multiple investors redemptions per page. So on this particular page, you can see that the check is paid to our client in care of us. For 2 redemptions here that happened. Nobody else on this particular page happens to be an investor of PIP, but we get to see how all their stuff is performed, which is interesting. This county is the only one that actually does that, which I find interesting. Okay, so now we've essentially gotten to the performance analysis. This is a report that our software spits out at any given moment in your investment time frame. So based on what I've shown you here, the redemption performance of this investment was off the charts. At 37.41% net yield for all redemptions today. So that's net of our fees, everything else. So looks awesome on paper, but we're gonna start to dissect that a bit now. Let me back that up a little bit. No, let's go here. Okay, so this is what the report looks like. If you're an investor of ours, this is what it looks like on your dashboard. When you log in and you say, okay, I want to see what the activity is going on this week at PIP. Let's see what's happening. Okay, so what we see here is this box I have in green. That's an unredeemed lien. And that is where we kind of start picking apart those awesome returns and that the coasting we were doing. That's an unredeemed lien, which means we have to initiate foreclosure because that is your biggest leverage to getting it to redeem or getting your money back out of it or getting the property in lieu of it redeeming. And remember, I told you they have weird laws in Illinois where you actually have to start the foreclosure process before the lien has even matured to the point where they can't redeem it anymore. So it's kind of a mixed bag, if you will. Now the one in red, obviously we foreclosed on as well, but it redeemed in foreclosure. So you see this one was investment was $7,055.34. The redemption total is it redeemed at 108% plus the fees that were involved with foreclosure, or at least a portion of the fees that were involved with foreclosure. So that's why you see kind of a variance between the income earned and the county fees that were collected and the redemption total. So the income earned was $76,1977, but about 2,000 of that was, let's call it lost, because we had to engage foreclosure before it redeemed. That's what's in those county fees there. So the redemption actually was closer to $5,000, even though it redeemed at 108%. And the reason being is you had to foreclose, and the cost of foreclosures are not refundable. So this is where it gets a little tricky for investors. You have those great returns, those great redemptions, but once you get into the foreclosure process, you start chipping away at those great returns because you got to make decisions about foreclosure or not foreclosure, and it's a calculated risk, obviously, but it can be a very rewarding risk. Here's 2 more on the same client statement here that you can see they both redeemed. I can tell that they both redeemed based on the county fees that are involved. One redeemed very early in the foreclosure process. One redeemed about 5 months later, which is why you see those fees kind of creeping up a little bit there, because it's a staged process, and we'll look at that as well. Again, another one redeemed. So out of all that performance he had going on, he had 4 liens that were unredeemed that he had to make decisions on. So we say keep calm and buyer beware, right? It goes for any type of investment. So let's re-examine what we just discussed. We have the value active of the remaining liens was $11,205. So we did this great performance with all these great redemptions that provided these great returns. Now we have to dip into those returns and consider those foreclosure costs. And as we saw in those spreadsheets, someone redeemed in the foreclosure process, which means that we kind of hurt ourselves a little bit in the performance of those redemptions because they redeemed in foreclosure. So now we have to rely on those that didn't redeem in foreclosure for what's going to bring the big payout, if you will. Now, I already mentioned this, but let's just rehash it again as we get into foreclosures. For the last 23 years, I have said that Illinois is a redemption state. It is a redemption state. As you saw, majority of the liens redeem in their life cycle. Every year, it seems like that number is going up a little bit more. And because of everything that's going on right now, I think that number is going to go up even more, which means we're going to have more unredeemed liens and more decision making that we have to do on the backside. Now, it's still an excellent opportunity, which we're going to get into, but it's just changed the dynamic, if you will. You're going to be a property owner, if you will, if you're investing in tax liens in Illinois, with the increase of liens unredeeming, and with this backlog that Chris and I were talking before we got on this call, the backlog of taxes and foreclosures and evictions and that faucet has to be turned back on at some point, or we're going to have banks failing again like we did in the last recession. Nobody knows how that's going to play out. Nobody will until after the election. But needless to say, that backlog is there. Something's got to happen. So there's going to be an influx of distressed property coming into the market, but there's also opportunity where that comes. So that's where I want to tear apart the hype of the great redemption returns in Illinois and focus more on what the back end is going to provide. So we talked about this briefly, about the extension of the maximum time, because again, we want as many liens to redeem as we possibly can. We touched on the petition filing and the services of notice, and here it is highlighted for you. It has to be done between 5 and 3 months before the redemption period expires. Now, that's a really odd number, and there's actually a reason for it. It's to trip up tax buyers. It is to trip you up and have you, essentially miss that window, which is, it's a win-win for the legislators to have this kind of language in there, if you will, that they're still looking out for their constituents, so forth and so on. And it has caught us a few times. It's probably going to catch us this year because of COVID. We're in foreclosures as we speak for last year. Those were already in the cycle, so no moratorium for those. And it's taking us twice as long to file the notices and whatnot with the sheriff's department. And so we're wondering if we're going to get caught in that 5 to 3 month window, even though it's completely out of our control. So we'll see what happens. It's definitely a new year for us. Now, if we step through the foreclosure process, I'm not going to get deep into this. If you go to our website, if you're interested more in learning about Illinois, I'm just kind of scratching the surface here. If you're interested more, go watch our webinar on YouTube, which is called Illinois in Reverse. It's something I've changed the way we present Illinois, because again, I think we're going to have more cash flow opportunities to the state of Illinois. But it really digs deep down into how everything in Illinois works. So if we step through the process, what I really want you to focus on is foreclosure costs in Illinois could exceed your original cost of the lien by 8 or more times. And how we get there is back taxes, penalties, cost to foreclose. So we'll look at all of that in just a second. So again, on that foreclosures in reverse, I explain a lot of what this is, the foreclosure initiation, if you will. There's reassessment and title work that's involved. Remember, it's distressed real estate. It's been distressed for at least 2 years. A lot can happen in 2 years. So we go out, we reassess, we make sure, we take pictures, we see if it's occupied, we see if we can get it to redeem one last time before we start investing other fees. And then the fees just kind of drop out as we go through the process. But you get an idea of roughly what the cost is going to be, based on this scale. Now again, we're going through the foreclosure process. I just showed you 4 different steps. Here's 4 more. There's actually a total of 16 different steps that you have to go through in the foreclosure process before you will actually end up with title to the process. So you see in this one, the 4th one is it can take months to do the prove-up process. We've seen it take over a year to do the prove-up process, which is also called the foreclosure process. So that's something to keep in mind, is that it's relatively easy to get to the foreclosure phase of investing in liens in Illinois. But once you get there, oh man, the floodgates just open and you're hit with all these crazy decisions that have to be made. And we're there to do that for you if you're an investor or PIP. We do all of this. However, this is just taking the hype out of what investing in tax liens is. And I'm only using Illinois as one state. This applies to every state. I don't care what state you're investing in. There's a lot of back channeling that has to happen, and a lot of behind the scenes work that has to happen for you to be successful. If you are successful in a foreclosure, you get a tax deed that just looks as simple as this particular one here does. It just shows you again that we bought it for taxes, when we bought it, when the deed was executed, our attorney who signed off on it on behalf of our client, and you get a tax deed to the property. And then okay, now what starts? Well, now you have to figure out how you're going to liquidate that investment, cash flow that investment, or how you're going to make good on the total investment overall. Now, what I'm showing you here is a number of different tax deeds that are cash flowing right now. They're not, other than the one highlighted in green, they're not specific to that account I just showed you. I just want to show you on this. We're going to take a minute on this, and you see the street address, what it is, the square footage, the original lien cost. Let's use the first one as an example. Now, I said 8 times your original lien cost is what it's going to cost you to foreclosure. This one's almost 10 times in foreclosure costs. So why the variance? If you just go down this column, the next one is half the cost of foreclose. The one after that is almost 3 times or 12 times as much. And you just go down, you see these different costs. What that cost is back taxes. If the person in front of you decided that they didn't want to foreclose and they found a reason to kick it back to the county, well, now there's back taxes on there that we weren't aware of when we bought the lien, which gives us the option to do the exact same thing that buyer does. But if the property is worth it to go forward, then we want to go forward because it's still going to cash flow very well. So this is something that you get into on the backside. So we've essentially wiped out all profits on the redemptions as we got into this phase. I mean, if you look at the one in green, the individual who owned that portfolio had about $15,000 in net profits on his redemptions. Just in the foreclosure costs, we ate up all but $5,000 of that. And then we put some repairs into that. Then we paid more taxes into that. And the total investment after everything was done, it went from $624 to $33,493.55. That's not all bad because if you look at the subject to down on the left of your screen, his rent is great. His total investment, oh, I got that number wrong. There's a mistake in that one. His cap on that, since I'm off by about $1,000, his cap on that is call it 22, 21%. That is an astounding rental return and a great cash flow when the national average in the US is 8.4%. As you can see, Google knows everything. I just punched into Google national average rental yield, and this is what popped up on top. So when you're talking about Illinois tax liens, yes, they are awesome. The returns on redemptions are great, but there is a what happens if they don't redeem, and you have to take that in consideration now rather than 2.5 years from now. And you have to know that there's a great cash flow play in Illinois right now to acquire real estate for a lot less than it's worth. I do believe that Illinois is going to start to appreciate again. Whether you're for it or against it, the states that have legalized recreational use of marijuana have all turned themselves around considerably. So Illinois just did that last year. So that's happening now. So you got appreciation, you've got good equity, but most importantly, you've got great cash flow. If you go through all the processes and steps of investing in tax liens in Illinois. My screen just froze up on me. So I just showed you the average reality of the situation. I always like to give investors an address that they can go confirm the information I'm talking to you about themselves. If I go back to this screen real quick, if you plug in any of these addresses, even though they don't have the city, if you just put Illinois, chances are they're going to pull up for you. And if not, if you want to go confirm them yourself, give us a call and I'll give you that information. But here are two that, if let's say we just did no investment back into them. This one in Quincy, Illinois, total investment was $8,000. That was after all the back taxes, and everything into it. If we sold it as is, which is hard in Illinois right now. It's hard. It's a great cash flow market. It's not a great flip market at all. The as-is value is $19,000, so double your total investment. If you do the repairs, it's worth $60,000. Looking at the house, you might say, "Whoa, that's a lot more than minor repairs." It's minor on on our scale of things, because we do this day in and day out, and you haven't seen some of the things that we've seen. So if you cash flowed it, you're into it for $18,000. As I mentioned, I'm working from home today, so pardon the dogs. So your investment total is $18,007.66. Gross rent on this is $900 a month. Gross profit per year, and this is definitely on the high side, but it's 60%. You're not going to find that or beat that anywhere. So this is bringing that ugly about foreclosures in Illinois back to something that's very nice. Here's another one, 578 Matthews. Again, you can go do the due diligence yourself, and you'll find the same numbers here. If we cash flowed it, all the repairs all in, was $58,000, and now we're back to those caps I showed you in the first screen, which is going to be your average if you take it all the way through of anywhere from 20 to 25%. So that's what we're doing on a regular basis in Illinois. And Illinois tax sales are essentially they're going on now. And again, we talked about this before the broadcast, Chris, but they're being spaced out because of COVID, and the reason being is obviously you don't want a lot of people crammed into a small room, all screaming at the top of their lungs for the best bid. And if you're sitting on a computer, which you either have an outcry or you have a in the courthouse sale where you're behind a computer pushing on a keyboard. They're pushing those things back, but they can only push them so far because, as we discussed, the counties have to have those funds to operate. The CARES Act has not in any shape or form applied to the taxes that you owe on your property. If the mortgage companies are now on, if they're now not able to evict, not able to foreclose, not able to collect, then they don't have the cash right now to pay those taxes either. So again, there's there's opportunity amongst the chaos, but it's interesting to watch how the chaos is going to play out throughout it. But it's going to be what we saw after the last recession. It's going to be a great time to be a cash flow investor and be acquiring properties for half market value and cash flowing those properties out. And with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Charles. And before I just have some quick thoughts and things I wanted to discuss related to investing in tax liens using retirement funds, I did want to just mention, and I do see some questions coming in, that if you have a question, on the right-hand side, if you happen to be at a computer screen, there's a button there or a tab that says questions. Just type in your question. And so what I will do is I'll read those questions out loud, and I will get those answered at the end. Most of these will probably be for you, Charles. But give me 2 seconds here. I'm going to take back control, and I apologize, I didn't keep up with you, but we'll get there real quick.
Sorry, I gave it back to you too soon.
Yeah, no worries. So the idea here is that you can use retirement funds to invest in tax liens, or in some cases tax deeds. And I just wanted to hit on a few key points. For those of you that are new to the concept or the idea of investing with retirement funds, it's important to know that you just need to have the right kind of account. And so at New Direction Trust, all of the accounts that we have are what are known as self-directed. So if you have a self-directed retirement account, it opens up the possibility of investing in tax liens or tax deeds and things of that nature. But just be aware that if you have I'll just use the term traditional type retirement plan, you're not going to be able to invest in this with those types of custodians. You definitely have to have a self-directed account. We're more than happy to explain how that works here at New Direction Trust. I did want to point out, Charles mentioned that there's two kinds of investors when it comes to tax liens, active or passive. And I just wanted to point out that you can do either or both. So active means that you could potentially be the person who goes to the tax lien sale and actually is buying these tax liens using your retirement funds. That's obviously allowed. You can do that. Or you could be more of a passive investor. So passive investor, from what I'm thinking is, you find somebody who invests on your behalf. So you're not the one actually going to the tax lien sale. You're essentially hiring someone to do that for you. Just be aware that from our perspective, we don't care which of those you do, they're both allowed. Or you could do a combination of both. And Charles, I might have you weigh in on this, but one of the things I wanted to mention was that, number one, you do need a self-directed retirement account. And just so everyone knows, the flavor of the retirement account doesn't matter. It could be a Roth IRA, it could be a SEP IRA or a traditional IRA, it could even be a self-directed 401k plan, but whatever plan you happen to have, just be aware that you can have checkbook control. So what do I mean by checkbook control? Essentially, your retirement funds are going to reside at a bank, and you have the ability to either send a wire or write a check. And Charles, for most of the sales that you go to, if someone is interested in actually going to the sale, making purchases, how quickly do they want those funds to be deposited from that
Right,
sale?
right. So if they're coming out and we're going to place those funds, from our perspective, we want them within a week of the auction. As far as coming back in, and we're talking tax liens here, the turnaround time from the time we get a redemption report to when those funds get back into the account, it can take up to 90 days.
Okay. And one of the things I've heard for people that like to actually attend the tax lien sales, a lot of times the counties want payment the day of the sale or sometimes funds on deposit. The
Oh, for sure.
reason the
Yeah.
reason I bring this up is that if this is the kind of investment that you're thinking of doing yourself, it might be beneficial to have checkbook control. And all I will mention is that you can have checkbook control with any of these accounts. It's just a conversation worth having, because if that is your intention, that's probably the best way or direction to go. One thing that's a key consideration, then again, and Charles hit upon this, is that probably most of these tax liens get redeemed, meaning you invest and you get some of that investment back along with some interest. But for those that you foreclose and you end up owning, remember that if you own those in your retirement plan and that property's owned, essentially by your IRA, you cannot be the one in there doing any kind of physical labor. And I just want to mention that because you have to think about the possibilities of where this investment can go. So originally you may not have thought, I'm going to be buying a house, but if the taxes never get paid off, you may end up owning that house. As long as you're aware that you cannot personally go in there and perform any of the labor, you're going to have to hire that out with an IRA plan. That's just how it has to go. So just be aware that if you do end up with a property, you're not the one in there doing demo, painting, doing those kinds of things. And so, with that being said, I do want to turn it over to the Q&A section, and there have been some questions that have been coming in, Charles. So I'll go ahead and read the questions out loud, and I'll let you address these. And the first question, and there might be some state laws that tie into this, but have you ever or can you do a cash for keys instead of doing a full-blown foreclosure? What does that look like?
Okay, so yeah, you can. Cash for keys does work, and I briefly showed you that reassessment slide. When we're doing the reassessments, we are negotiating those kind of things as well. Now here's the double edge to that sword. Uh, let's assume you do cash for keys and then they default on the terms of that loan. Now you're outside the scope of the ability to foreclose, and somebody behind you may be able to. So what we recommend you do is for all the, and we call them CFDs, contracts for deeds. So if we've negotiated and set up a CFD, what we recommend is that you still go through the foreclosure process and proceedings, just in case they do default on that. And it happens a lot. So the way we set up the CFDs is we try as best we can to get at least the cost of the foreclosure costs covered as a deposit on the CFD, and then those fees are collected, those rents are collected by us, or those payments are collected by us, and then they are deposited to your account. So the short answer is yes, but to use that strategy to circumvent the foreclosure process, not recommended.
Okay, that makes sense. So yes, you could do it, but buyer beware. There could be some issues with that. So the next question I'll go ahead and answer, but essentially the question's asking, will this presentation be available in a form that's shareable and able to reach out for more information? So the answer to that is yes. We are recording today's presentation, and an email will go out tomorrow. And in that email will be included the link to today's presentation. So all the slides that you're hearing, everything that you're hearing, you can go back and review. And as you can see, Charles' contact information for the PIP group is up there as well. And so you certainly can get more information. Charles, can I invest using non-retirement funds?
Yes, absolutely. Kind of like you guys look at it as passive or not passive. We look at it as, it's an account. You can invest using an LLC. You can invest using an IRA LLC. You can use, your personal name. Revocable trust, irrevocable trust makes no difference to us. We just recognize it as an account.
Okay. Uh, there are some questions here about getting more information, and so that's why we have this slide up here. So if you do want to get more information, essentially about what the PIP group does, certainly you can contact them. The idea today is not to pitch the investment. Um, and so I have a question here, and it basically is asking what's the speaker's name. So the gentleman who's speaking is Charles Sells. And that's your legally given name, right, Charles? That's not a
It is. It
yeah.
is.
All right. I
Yeah, I happen to get lucky. But on that question, I would just say again, more information. I hit on it just for a second on our YouTube channel, and all you have to do is just PIP Group YouTube channel or YouTube, and it should pop up. Watch Illinois in reverse because we do a deep dig. Again, it's strictly educational, but we do a deep dig of how everything in Illinois works.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that information. The next question I can ask or answer, and that is the individual is asking, can we manage the subs doing the work? So yes, if you purchase this tax lien and you use retirement funds and you end up owning it in your IRA, so to speak, you can absolutely do the intellectual management. And so that means you can pick out the subs, you can pick the colors, you can pick what work to do or not to do. Intellectual management is allowed. It's the physical management. You can't go in there and do the physical work. Um, this question essentially is asking is there was not much information about tax lien versus tax deed states and the difference between the two. Charles, could you touch upon a tax lien versus a tax deed and kind of how they're similar or different?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question actually. So there's three levels. There's tax liens, there's tax deeds, and then there's hybrid liens. And so tax liens, essentially what the county is doing is they're saying, you know what, we're willing to collect the payments on behalf of the tax buyer and have all of this process through our offices, but we do not have the wherefore to be able to withstand these cash flows at this time. So states like Illinois sell tax liens, and then you foreclose on those and you get a tax deed. Other states like Michigan, for example, they used to have a great tax lien program, but then they went to the tax deed process. So essentially, they're holding all the liens themselves and collecting the interest themselves. And then they offload the deeds when the time comes and you're buying a tax deed at that point. Actually, there's four categories. Then you have the hybrid liens. We're talking about states like Georgia and Texas. And Georgia and Texas, essentially what they sell you is a tax deed to the property, but we call them redeemable deeds. So they act like a tax lien. In the state of Georgia, you get a 20% penalty on no matter what you spend on that particular at that particular auction. Now, let's say it's a $5,000 tax lien, you spend $100,000 on it. You're going to earn $120,000 on that if it redeems. Not earn, but you're going to earn $20,000 plus your original principal when it redeems. So that's a hybrid state. Then you have the ugly duckling cousin, if you will, of Florida, who sells both. It's really convoluted, but Florida, you can buy a tax lien. Majority of the sales are online now, so you're likely not going to be very successful because it's picked at random. But you buy a tax lien, and then you wait 2 years, and then you do what's called a TDA. That's tax deed application. You do that with the county. You submit that. I believe you pay, probably around $1,000 in foreclosure initiation costs. The county does all of that, and then guess what? You've held on to this thing, and they're going to sell it at another auction. So they can sell your investment, your tax deed at another auction to the highest bidder. So again, you have to go to the courthouse. You have to bid on your own tax deed, essentially. If it's redeemed, you get whatever you have the interest for. plus, I believe 12%. It's been a lot of years since I've been in Florida, ever since they went online, essentially. So there's essentially four different categories that you have to work with.
Yeah, is it safe to say that if you're buying a tax lien, you're probably not buying the property itself? You're just
Yeah,
buying a right to foreclose in the future, right?
correct.
But if you're at a tax deed sale, you're probably buying the property.
Yes.
And
Yep.
okay,
Yep.
fair enough. There are some questions here about typical investment size and fee structures. And so what I would say is uh, contact the PIP group or Charles directly, and I think they can go over those kinds of things. I don't think we want to spend time doing that now. This is Charles, look into your crystal ball, and this question's asking you, what do you foresee happening in the market next year? And I think by market, this investment category, tax liens.
If we're, I think across the board, we're going to see an influx from our perspective of opportunity. We're going to see more tax liens. We're going to see more volume of tax liens being sold. We're going to see more volume of foreclosures coming through the pipeline. It's inevitable. Housing market. When is it going to take that punch? Because right now it's kind of it's doing weird things, right? We've actually had more sales in our fix and flip programs since this COVID started than all of 2019. So it's weird, but the inevitable is definitely there. There's a backstop where the banks can't keep not getting cash flow, and same with the taxes and same with the counties. It's at some point it's all gotta correct itself. And again, we were talking about this before we went live. Is that we're also focused on the election and the COVID and the riots that nobody's really talking about. What's going to happen after all this is said and done. Whether you're right or left, nobody's having the conversation. So I think we're going to see something similar to the last recession. All the numbers and all the data states that's going to be the case. Right now we have an unemployment of about, I believe, 10%. It peaked in May at 14%, and at its worst pace in 2009, it was at like 10.2%. So we've been coasting at that number for months now. So something's got to happen, right? It's gotta.
Yeah, unfortunately, when people either can't pay rent or can't pay the mortgages, there are going to be distress situations. And how
Yeah.
that shakes out, we don't know. We don't know if there's going to be more stimulus. But what I do think, Charles, is that people who are agile and can adapt, there's going to be some opportunity. Uh, this individual is asking, can you, meaning Charles, advise or educate on other states, or are you really just focused on Illinois?
I can advise on other states and educate on other states. There was a point that we were almost in all the states. I just wanted to use Illinois because it's one of the top ones that's out there as far as a lot of these pitchmen pitch, if that's a word. um,
Yeah.
you hear the biggies: Georgia, Texas, Illinois. um, Years ago it was Michigan, but they sell you on these big states. So I just wanted to use one of those. But if I don't have the information for you, I can definitely tell you where to go get a synopsis of it.
Okay. And maybe just mention again, I'm getting some questions about the Illinois in reverse. So if they go to YouTube, you have a channel there, and is it just PIP Group, PIP Group?
Yeah, if you search PIP Group, it should pop up. If not, just shoot us an email and Dylan can send you a link. You can also get to it through our website, pipgroup.com.
Okay.
So there's multiple ways to get there.
So this question's a little bit similar. Is Illinois the only state that you work in? Do you work in any other states?
Right now, we're primarily in Illinois, and reason being is we have our feet really well grounded there. Other reason being is as more people go online, obviously that creates a tremendous amount of competition. Using Florida as an example, we used to be very heavy in Florida. Once they went online, we went from let's say 50 attendees at an auction to 50,000. And so bidding went from 16, 17% down to a quarter percent. So one of the reasons we're in Illinois is because they've already passed legislation that prevents them from going online. You have to physically be there to attend. Now, Georgia and Texas, same thing. You have to be there to attend. But because of these pitchmen that have been out there over the course of the last 10 years, let's say, uh, auctions went from 100 people to 1,500 people. I was actually just talking to our foreclosure attorney in Georgia yesterday about this. That we've been out of the Georgia tax sales for the last 5 years because the bidding some people are bidding them up to market value. They have to sit on it for a year before they can even initiate foreclosure, and then they have to make the repairs that we're going to have to be there. So they're already upside down before they even started. So there's a lot of different reasons why we're pretty big in Illinois and have pulled out of a lot of the other states. Again, we were in Arizona for a lot of years. Once they went online, same problem. So if you can't physically attend, it's probably not worth your time.
Yeah, fair enough. This individual, Charles, is asking, obviously you talked about Illinois here, but if they were interested in investing in their own state, do you have any recommendations for where they can find any rules or statutes about, you know, is it a tax lien, tax deed state, or, just basically the interest rate, all those kinds of information if they're interested in doing it in their backyard?
Yep, my ex-partner actually of another business enterprise we did back in 2014. The website is called Tax Sale Resources, and you can get a quick synopsis of how the process works, and then just take that summary and dig in online to your state tax code, and within an hour you can have a pretty good idea if it's something you're interested in or not.
Okay. Uh, the next question's asking for the Illinois tax sales. Do you bid down on the interest? Is it a premium bid or is it set? Like what does that look like when you're at one of those
Somebody's got some
sales?
knowledge. So yes, you're bidding down on the interest rate, and as I said, we're in 87 counties, so we spread ourselves to the point where there's very little competition, so we're able to get really good rates. But yes, it's a bid down state. It's also penalty state, which means that if you bought the lien for $1,000 at 18% and the sale closed at 3 and the homeowner came in at 4 to pay that off, he owes you $180 on top of your $1,000 investment.
Got it. And the penalty is just built in, that's going to be there regardless, right?
Yep. Hmm.
Uh, the next questions, they must be interested in your software. Is this like proprietary software or something you developed, or is this something that's available to anybody, kind of tracking all that information that you were showing?
We did develop it. It is not proprietary. We did it, and he's very big at this point, but we helped the guy design it and build it. If you reach out to me at that info@pipgroup.com, I can give you his information directly. I don't know what he would charge for it, but it is available.
Okay. And it looks like this might be the last question, Charles. And it's state specific. This individual is asking about New Mexico and your opinion if that would be a good state to look in as far as investing.
Oh, it's been so long. I believe New Mexico is a tax deed state. Don't hold me to that though. So you would be able to pick them up at the courthouse auctions whenever they have them. But uh, I couldn't say for certain. Uh, Again, go to that site, taxsaleresources.com, and just take a look on there, and then explore from there.
Sure. All righty. Well, I did want to mention very quickly that if you happen to be on the webinar and you're interested in how you might be able to put your retirement money to work, whether it's in tax liens or some other type of investment, just wanted to put my contact information. Once again, my name is Chris Tanner. I work with the business development team, and I can answer any questions that you have, explain how the process of getting an account opened works, and how that money can then be invested into things like tax liens. And so, Charles, thank you so much.
I
This was
appreciate it, Chris,
very,
as always.
yeah, very informative. We thank you for your time, and maybe we can do this again in the future sometime.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. Take care, everybody.
Take care. Have a good one.